Hey, Dean. Hey, Wags. What you doing?
I'm ready to drink.
All right.
Lombardi's Legends podcast. We've got a former professional bartender here, Wags. What are you thinking?
I think today we should make a Bernie Blast. And, of course, we're going to be using Leap Spirts vodka. And then let's just go ahead and get started here, Dave, shall we? So
let's do it.
First of all, what we're going to do is we're going to put 1.5 ounces of OJ in the bottom of an empty glass. Close look. 4 sets of supper.
Hello, Lombardi's Legends. It's Dane here, talking Green Bay Packers football tonight. Looks like my partner Wags has had a little bit of technical difficulties. So I'll tell you what. How about that game, folks? How about that game against the Chicago Bears? Packers heading into their bye. What's up, Shadid? Good to see you, man. Folks that are listening on our on the podcast, we are recording live here tonight on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, and I'll tell you what an exciting football game that was to watch the Green Bay Packers head down to Chicago, folks. And who says that the Packers don't have any fight in them? They went down. They took care of business against the Chicago Bears. And Aaron Rodgers still owns the Chicago Bears. And as we wait for Wags to be able to join us again, I'll just say it was an awful lot of fun to watch and seeing some chatter in the chat. Glad that the Packers made a comeback. Me too. Holy smokes, me too. It was shaping up early in that football game like things were going to get ugly, fast and furious. We were used to that as Packer fans this year, but you know what ends up happening? Christian Watson plays phenomenal football for the Packers yet again. How good has he been? How good has Christian Watson been for the Packers over the last 4 or 5 weeks? He played phenomenal ball. Aaron Jones gets banged up, but I thought A.J. Dillon played really good football as well. The offensive line looked really, really solid. Aaron Rodgers, there are so many things to go around with this Green Bay Packers team, but I'll just say, and it looks like Wags is trying to get back in here again, but I'll just say, man, I was impressed with the tenacity of this Packers team. I was impressed by the stick-to-ness of this Packers team, and it looks like Wags is able to join us. Wags, talking about this Packers win against Chicago Bears, the big comeback, talking a little bit about how, it started off the way we're too used to this season with things not going well, but then all of a sudden the Packers turn it on in the second half, and I was just touching on how good was Christian Watson. Do we have a superstar in our midst? Wags, how are you feeling after this Green Bay Packers win heading into the bye week?
You got to feel good. I mean, Christian Watson is definitely a difference maker. This offense looks more like some past seasons. I don't know if I'm ready to call Christian Watson a bona fide superstar. Touchdowns in 4 games. So that's what superstars do. And he's made impact plays all over the field. So can he do it over a longer period of time? We'll see. I'm really hoping he can stay healthy and close the season strong. Even if he doesn't stay on this torrid pace, you've got to be really pleased with what you see. And this is what's giving us hope, even though we've got like 5% playoff odds. We're talking a little bit about end of season post-bye predictions for the rest of the way. But Dane, I'll tell you what, that's got to be really encouraging. And we haven't even seen he and Romeo Doubs out there on the field for the most part. I think they've only gotten 60 snaps on the field together this entire season. That wasn't the plan going into the season. Certainly the plan was we were going to lean on Sammy Watkins, on Randall Cobb, on, Alan Lazard. Those guys have had some injury issues too. So it just hasn't quite come to fruition as early in the season as what we'd hoped. And Goody came out and said that here this last week, was clearly that transition didn't happen as quickly as what they were hoping it would. So that said, it's definitely encouraging. This offense looks cleaner. It looks like everything's there for both the running game and pass. I see what they're able to do to close out the season. It's not going to be easy to go out there and get a bunch more wins and try to run the table, but it's not over yet. So we've got a sliver of hope, and that's all that I think we can ask for at this point. And Christian Watson's a big reason why. But Dean, another guy that really did yeoman's work, A.J. Dillon. I think the last couple of weeks he's really hit his stride too, and certainly Aaron Jones, we know what he can do, and we've been pining for him to get his touches all season, but he's been a little dinged up, especially this last week. And A.J. Dillon, 21 touches, really efficient, both running the ball, getting another touchdown, straight games, 19 all-purpose yards, so was able to catch a few passes. I mean, it was really efficient running the ball. That's good to see from an identity standpoint. What do you think that means for this Packers offense when we were down pretty much the whole game until the fourth quarter and still stick to the run game? That's a back to yard again, the knee this time, to be able to stick with what you think is going to work, get A.J. Dillon his touches with Aaron Jones a little dinged up. And I think that really paid dividends for them when they got into the fourth quarter. Don't you agree?
Yeah, it did. And Wags, the consistency of this Green Bay Packers offensive line, yet again, even without Bakhtiari playing, you mentioned A.J. Dillon, how good he was. How about Zach Tom playing awesome football for the Packers as well over there at left tackle? I thought played really well. But Wags, I was really proud of this team. And one of the reasons I was so proud of them was in that fourth quarter. You mentioned Dillon grinding away against the Bears. And I was shouting it at my TV basically saying, the Bears look tired. The Bears look run down. And they did. And you could tell that the Packers offensive line started to just take care of business. You could see them leaning on the Chicago Bears defense and really enforcing their will against the Bears. And then when you have an offensive line that's starting to roll and starting to play downhill the way we saw the Packers offensive line gel and do so in the fourth quarter, and then you've got a 240-pound tailback running up their backsides and blowing guys over, that's what we want to see out of A.J. Dillon. I think that's why he was drafted by the Packers. We want to see him close out games. We want to see A.J. Dillon in close football games wearing down the opposing defense, and the Packers are able to do that. It was great to see on the road them take care of business and do the types of things that we need to do. And Wags, I will say, A.J. Dillon, Christian Watson, some of these young offensive linemen, there's a bit of a youth movement afoot in this Green Bay Packers offense right now at key positions. And we're seeing some of these young guys really, really make an impact on this offense across the board and playing meaningful plays and helping win football games for the Packers when it matters most.
Yeah, and that's the skill position guys. We're not even talking about the guys up front, right? Across that offensive line, Zach Tom, I thought really well for the most part,
good
filling in, and then every other guy that was in that starting offensive line is in their first 3 years in the league? Is Yash in his third or fourth year? But
maybe fourth for Yash.
When Yash Nyman, who's been playing really good football, is the veteran of that offensive line group, and they're able to play that well. That's saying a lot. So that's exciting to see, and hopefully coming out of the bye, we can talk about, this team. Finally, this was a much needed break. Hopefully some health, especially for this offensive line. David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, those guys I'm sure could use a week right now on the offensive side. Aaron Rodgers, I'm sure, could use an extra week to rest up and hopefully heal a little bit for this home stretch. Aaron Jones could use a week. So I think the fact we were able to gut this out, and a few weeks ago, we would have lost the game, the Bears. I'm just going to say that. But we've come a little late, but offensively, we've turned a bit of a corner, and that's encouraging to see. Is it going to be enough? Well, we'll have to see how it plays out. But I think there's interesting games this week, and Packers aren't playing. So I think the teams in front of them, I'll tell you what, they don't have the easiest schedules. You just look down the Giants, the Commanders, the Seahawks. All of those teams have some tough schedules. So if the Packers can just stack up some wins, amazing as it sounds, it's not that realistic that give it 2-3 weeks and our playoff odds could go from 5% to maybe 35-40%, and that's still not amazing percentages, but it's not as far-fetched as you would if we can have a couple of good weeks here and see some things go our way. So Dane, I'm definitely excited to see how things break on the offensive side of the ball as we head into these last few games of the season.
Wags, we're talking offense right now. Aaron Rodgers obviously always a topic whenever you're talking Green Bay Packers and offensive football. I saw him make a couple throws. We've kind of talked about it in previous weeks about the thumb and, how much of it is inaccuracy is on the thumb, on other things. I saw a couple throws where it was very clear to me his thumb's bugging him like crazy. I saw one ball in particular, I can't recall which one, but the ball just left his hand and it went into the third row. It just made... Yes, to Randall Cobb. And to me, that tells me that when Aaron's letting that ball rip, he's not entirely sure where that ball's going either, to a certain extent right now with the thumb injury. So dude's definitely gutting it out. You mentioned the bye week. So it's critically important right now. If the Packers have any chance of making the playoffs, they have to win out, and they're going to need Aaron Rodgers to get better. And I got to imagine both the thumb, but especially the ribs, a week plus is going to go an extremely long way. And remember, they get that extra day. They don't play until Monday night against the Rams at Lambeau Field. They don't have to go on the road. So I think it's a big time, and we're going to learn a lot about this Packers team if they can win back-to-back games against the Rams next Monday night.
Yeah. Dane, I'm curious, and we're kind of not going a beat by beat recap here, but just sticking on the offensive side of the ball. What did you think in the moment of a couple of Coach LaFleur's decisions to go for it on fourth down? Certainly the first time it paid off with the Christian Watson touchdown. And so hard to argue with results, but I'm talking before the actual play. What were you thinking in the moment? Were you feeling good about that decision? Were you like, oh gosh, I wish he would just send Mason out there and tack some points on the scoreboard? The latter two times it didn't, or I'm sorry, they went for it on fourth down twice. The
Yeah.
the last time it seemed like that was a safer situation to go for it in some ways,
Yeah.
given the spot on the field and the number of yards that they needed to get. But what was your feeling? Were you like, good, let's go for it? What do we have to lose? Or what was your general thought on some of those fourth down calls that Coach
Well,
LaFleur said, go for it and get out there and try to score?
Wags, I'll tell you what, I'm learning a lot about myself as a Packers fan this year. We've watched the Packers our entire lives, and historically, when it's on the line, I tend to be a little bit more conservative, and I'm more of the guy that's, hey, let's kick some field goals, let's get some points, keep momentum forward. But I'll tell you what, with the record the way the record is, I love the aggression this year of saying, hey, let's throw caution to the wind. A little bit of like, what do you have to lose? If you got nothing to lose, right? The Packers are trying to find a way to win, to spark something, and to keep something going, knowing full well that the defense has struggled a little bit as well. And if the offense has a chance to strike and get points, and meaningful 6 points, do it. So I was all for it this week. And to be honest with you, the remainder of the year, anytime the Packers are in 4 down territory and there's a realistic shot at picking it up, I say go for it. I want to see the Packers be extremely aggressive. Now, I will say that I do have some frustration sometimes about our fourth down play selection and taking some deep shots on fourth and manageable, and we're chucking the ball 30, 40 yards downfield. That's not necessarily what I'm there for, but on the surface, if we're talking purely, okay, going for it on fourth down, more often than not this year, I've been, hey, in the camp of let's go for it, let's try to get some points, and let's be aggressive with this offense when we have a chance.
Yeah, for sure. And the third down, they had a 3rd and 1 early in the second half. It should have been a first down.
Yes, Dylan
blew the whistle. Apparently, that was. I know a lot of people were wondering why didn't Coach LaFleur challenge that. He asked, and the ref said that's not a challengeable call because they blew the play dead. So that's a frustrating situation,
Unreal.
but it was compounded by the fact that you've got 3rd and half a yard and they chuck it, 30 yards downfield. It's
I don't
like
understand
just move
it.
the chains right
Yeah.
there. Just move the chains right then.
Yeah.
So,
Move chains.
especially in that situation, Packers are down. You've got the ball to start the second half, and it's like we had a little bit of momentum from the way we closed the second quarter out, getting a touchdown in our last series before the half. So that was, not the best scenario. I completely agree with you. Maybe go for it. Go for 2 when we get touchdowns the rest of the year.
Yeah,
Really
right?
love that. Granted, the game wasn't over until we got the 2-point conversion successfully. At that point, it was pretty much over. There's a chance that the Bears could have scored and maybe if we don't get that 2-point conversion. I don't think it's real likely that they would have gone for 2 to try to get the win, but
Right.
who knows?
Who knows?
They could have. So it's not a no lose situation if they don't get it, but I think the risk is pretty low and the upside's really high. And
I liked it.
I like
Yeah.
I like that they were aggressive in that situation and they iced the game by converting on that. So that's always good to see. So I was curious about that. We've had some arguments about
Totally.
kind of going with game flow or going with your gut or going with the odds, so to say. And the funny thing is you said you're learning about yourself. I've kind of shifted to your side a little bit in the last couple of years.
So
Since
funny.
we had this argument where I was more, hey, the odds, and like I'm kind of shifting to your side of you got to understand what the situation is and just do with what your gut and your eyes are telling you. Is this a
Mhm.
situation where the offense is is looking smooth, like they're going to pick up, they have a good chance of picking this fourth down up or not? um and I thought that it was a worthy gamble in both
Yeah.
situations. So
I do too.
anyway, Dane, anything else offensively that you were really looking at from this game?
No, I mean, we're getting a really good peek at the future of the Packers' offensive line. I know offensive line's not always the sexiest thing to talk about, but if you're listening to a Green Bay Packer podcast on a bye week, you probably are goofy like we are, and it matters, right? And that front line of Zach, Tom, Melton Jenkins, Josh Myers, Runyon, and Nyman. You mentioned it, Wags. They're young. They're talented. We've seen Bakhtiari have a lot of challenges with his knee. Now he had the appendectomy. We wish him well, obviously, but I think that the writing's on the wall with the cap space and some of the issues that the Packers are going to have financially going forward, that they're going to get younger across the offensive line, I think realistically next year. And we very well could be looking at the starting five of the Green Bay Packers right now, what we saw against the Bears. And if you give this Packers team, I like what Zach Tom's been able to do at left tackle, Wags. I expect more competition to come in, but he's played really good ball. I think he's been a better left tackle than he's been a guard, and that's saying a lot. I mean, he's a fourth-round pick, rookie, playing left tackle and playing really good ball for the Packers. He's going to get better, too. So really like the offensive line. I'm as encouraged about that as I am about Christian Watson, and that's saying a lot because Watson's been so good, but the Packers kept Rodgers pretty clean, and they run the ball really well in this front five. So I'm eager and excited anytime we can have young, energetic, athletic offensive line to start to gel the way that we're seeing these five do it.
Yeah, for sure. So, Dane, what do you say we take a quick break
Yeah.
and talk about our sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook? Of course, DraftKings is the official sports betting partner of the NFL, and with the holiday season coming into full effect, DraftKings has some great same game parlays, easy and fast playouts, player prop options, etc. So if you are a new player, you can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game, and you get $150 in.
And folks, I don't know if you heard Wags on that. I heard a little bit of a breakup on his end. I'll tell you what, folks. He said it. If you didn't hear him, hear it again. $5 on any NFL team with DraftKings Sportsbook to win their game, and you get $150 in free bets if they do. So check it out right now. Everyone can earn up to 100% boost with DraftKings Step Up Same Game Parlays. You just go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, place a same game parlay, and combine multiple bets like which team will win, player props, point totals, and more. The more legs you add, the bigger the boost, the bigger your shot to win big. And I'll tell you what, it's this week there's a big slate of games. Obviously the Packers have a bye week, but there's a lot of big games that you could be watching. I look at the Chargers versus the Dolphins as an interesting one. Obviously there's always keeping an eye on the NFC North. We've got the Detroit Lions against the Vikings. I hope they both lose personally, but you can bet on any games anytime with the DraftKings Sportsbook app. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code TPPN. Place a $5 bet on any NFL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with the code TPPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Wags, are you still there? Can you hear me?
I can, and I don't know if you can hear me, Dane. So,
I
folks,
can.
really apologize for our technical difficulties. Wags, this guy, decided to go on vacation with the Packers season kind of in the balance. I think we decided that we deserved a little time off with the bye week here. So, Yeah, so I'm in, southern Mississippi right now, enjoying some nice warm weather. Don't have the best connection, but we're powering through with a bi-week Packer podcast, like I said.
We
So,
can't
Dane,
we
let's
can't
talk a little bit
confirm or
about this defense.
deny. Hang on, we cannot confirm nor deny that Wags is with Brett Favre in Mississippi right now. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he's not. I'm just putting out that maybe he is, maybe he's not. Who knows?
I mean, I'm in the general vicinity. Am I stalking? I will not confirm or deny that either. But yeah, Dane, let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball and just really
Yeah.
quickly. We're going to recap the rest of the defense in this game, and then want to talk as we close up here predictions
Yeah.
for post bye. What do we think is going to happen? We've got some guys maybe coming back. What would we like to
Yep.
see? Buttons would we like to see the coaching staff push? Maybe some
Love it.
adjustments. Maybe some guys getting some more playing, etc. Down the stretch, but on what we saw from the defense in this game against the Bears. It didn't look like it was starting well, but honestly, they held them to 3 points in the second half. After Fields' really long touchdown run, didn't really give much up on the ground after that. I know Montgomery and Fields both kind of were doing some great work early on and didn't have much to do running the football for the entire second half with a lead. So that's got to be somewhat encouraging. But just overall, what were your thoughts on how the defense showed out in this game, and any signs of encouragement you have with this defense as we move forward down the stretch?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Kenny Clark played the best game he's played in probably a month and a half. I thought that he was really impactful against the run, especially in the second half, but also against the pass. He was eating up blocks and really played a role in keeping Fields largely in check in the second half. So thought he played really good football. Was also, I continue to be encouraged by Kingsley Enagbare, pass rusher. I was reading today. I got to give a shout out to Packers Reddit because they highlighted the fact that Enagbare has the best pass rush win rate percentage on any rookie this year, outside linebacker. That's pretty damn cool. Enigbare's had to, step up in the absence of Rashawn Gary. He's played really good football for the Packers. He was really close to Fields on a couple plays, but largely speaking, thought he just played a strong role for the Packers. To see that. Adrian Amos played a pretty good football game overall for the Packers. You got to be happy that all three corners for the Packers were able to force turnovers. At the end of the game, at the end of the day, the NFL, if you're getting turnovers, you're more than likely going to win more than you don't, right? And for the fact that all three Packer corners were able to get a ball one way or another, I thought was really, really good. So those are all the positives, Wags. Negatives, Devondre Campbell. He's still hurt. He looked like he was running slow and just not nowhere near had the speed or the burst that we're used to out of Devondre Campbell. And at corner, I thought Jair Alexander had a pretty up and down game for a guy who's your number one cornerback. Getting beat by Equinemius St. Brown and then some other guy I've never heard of. When you're Jair Alexander, everybody gets one, right? That happens. I'm not going to be Mr. Critical, but a couple times in one game against Jair was a little bit alarming to me. Obviously, he had an interception late in the game that was huge for this Packers defense. So I'm not looking to kill Jair by any stretch of the imagination, but I think going forward, hopefully those types of big plays and back-to-back series against Jair don't happen because we need guys that are premier guys to play premier more often than not. Whether that's fair or not, I don't care. It's just the fact of the matter with the defense. We're going to lean on Jair. We're going to pay him a lot of money. He's going to have to perform like the elite player that we know he can be.
Yeah, and with Jair, we're not talking about number one corner by default on a bad defense. We're talking about a guy that we're paying to be one of, if not the top cornerbacks in the league. And it's one thing when Jair's matched up with, a premier wide receiver on the other side of the ball. And he might get beat occasionally in a matchup like that. I could kind of understand that. Although, a premier corner usually has the advantage over a premier wide receiver. Even though it's a passing league, usually you see the top flight guys, they just don't get beat. And for Jair Alexander to, as you said, get beat long by Equimania St. Brown and Nikhil Harry is just inexcusable. And to me, that just is showing a lack of focus from him. And so I mean, we've been kind of hitting on Jair a little bit. You said you don't want to kill the guy. We've been saying, hey, man, you're out there talking, chatting, you've got the
Hmm.
swagger. That's all well and good. But the dude needs to back it up a little bit more. And as you said, give him credit for coming up with a key interception in a big moment in this game. So I don't want to completely take away from what he did, but for a guy of his stature
Yes.
to be getting beat for 50-yard plus pass plays downfield by, in his words, scrubs, and I'll give him credit for being honest. I don't know if he should
Right.
have probably said that, um, and he apologized later, but he was honest, and so clearly he was frustrated by it too. So maybe that's what it takes is for him to get a reality check and be like, dude, if AJ Brown is beating you a couple of times, that's one thing,
Hmm.
but when you got like these guys that should not really be beating Jair Alexander on field multiple times a game doing it. Maybe that's kind of a gut check for him. Thankfully, it didn't come in a losing situation, but
Right.
he's with Rashawn Gary out and with Devondre Campbell missing a bunch of games, and even though he came back, as you said, not being up to his normal self, Jair, I've been disappointed that he hasn't been that premier player that's lifted all tides in this secondary and in this defense. And so we'll see if he comes out of the bye with a little bit of a different approach, a little bit more focus, and maybe a little bit more of the right attitude, I'll say, to get the job done. Because if he can be his normal self and play the level that we think he can for the last few weeks, that could make a big difference. We're going to be playing some really good receivers with the Dolphins, with the Lions, even, and
Yeah.
definitely with the Vikings. So we need a Jair Alexander that's locked in, hasn't kind of lost focus, and doesn't seem to be, doing more than going through the motions out there. So I think it's fine. We love Jair, but I think it's fine to also be realistic and criticize the guy when we don't think he's performing at the level of his capabilities.
Totally. I
Dane,
mean,
also
we
on the
said
defense.
earlier this year when they played Washington, we said if you recall late in the game, Terry McLaurin beat Jair late in the game, and we talked. Oh, was it wrong to have Jair 1-on-1? And I said no. I mean, we trust Jair Alexander to play against the number ones, right? And that one, I'm not going to kill him for. But in a week like this against these two guys, like it's just got to be better. I'm not going to belabor it anymore, but you're spot on. I couldn't agree more. We just need more out of the guys that we're expecting to lead this team to the next level.
Yeah. And Terry McLaurin's a good receiver, probably a top 20 receiver in the league. True capability, that's also a really good receiver. And then we're talking with these Bears guys. I mean, EQ, we didn't think should have been on the Packers last year, even on the 53-man roster, and here he is burning
Right.
Jair Alexander, who we think can be a top 2-3 cornerback in the league. That's just not acceptable, and he knows it. So I'm not saying anything that Jair Alexander is not aware of, or that I wouldn't say to his face, or that he wouldn't say to himself, or that the coaching staff
Right.
or his teammates wouldn't be like, "Hey, Ja, come on, man! Like, what's going on there? You're better than that, right?" And so I think he spoke out of frustration from that too, because he clearly expects more of himself as well. But yeah, a guy like Terry McLaurin, really good receiver, but still top 2-3 corner in the league, shouldn't really be giving up big plays to a player of that caliber either. So it's not even like, we're talking like 3-4 levels up of what I expect from Jair Alexander. I'm saying like maybe a top 5, 6 receiver in the league is where it kind of evens out. And
Hmm.
he's not been at that level. So we'll see. We'll see if he can get
Right.
there here before the end of the season. He'll have some opportunities with some marquee receivers coming up on the
Yes.
schedule for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt
Dane,
about it.
I want to go back to the outside linebacker group and
Yeah.
defensive line, um, because I'm really curious. You talked about Enigbare, and he was, he outsnapped Jonathan Garvin, for sure.
Hmm.
Uh, Preston Smith definitely in snaps for our outside linebackers, but you look at a guy like Justin Hollins. I think he's been a really good effort guy. Uh,
Yes.
are you surprised that someone like Jonathan Garvin, who just hasn't really had the impact out there on the field when he's gotten his snaps and his opportunity, is still getting as many snaps as he is?
Yes.
And then on the defensive line, we've been talking about it all season, but Dean Lowry, Jaron Reed, we kind of know what we've gotten from those guys. They're in contract years. I don't think that they'll be back on the Packers. I'd be kind of disappointed if they were, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
Um, Devontae Wyatt's gotten a few more snaps. TJ Slayton hasn't seen an increase of snaps over the last month. Um, Dane, do you think coming out of the bye, could we get more snaps for TJ Slayton and Devontae Wyatt? And let's see what we have in these young
Yes.
guys, because I think we know what we have in Dean Lowry and Jaron Reed. And quite honestly, they're not the long term answer. So
Well,
I
when,
don't see. Yeah, go ahead. I was just going
well,
to say, I just don't see a lot of upside into continuing to roll with those guys.
no, I don't either. And, we said at the end of this pod, we wanted to talk a little bit here about looking ahead post bye and maybe some tweaks that we would like to see. And I think it starts up front with that defensive line. It's a great segue, Wags. Devontae Wyatt got 9 snaps last week and rated as the Packers' highest graded player, Pro Football Focus. He had a couple hurries. He played really good football in those 9 snaps. What's holding the Green Bay Packers back from playing Devontae Wyatt more over Dean Lowry? I don't understand why this is not his moment to shine, especially as we hit this final stretch run. Going into next year, we have Kenny Clark, we have TJ Slayton, Devontae Wyatt, and Jonathan Ford, the other rookie defensive linemen, are 4 guys under contract with this defense. Jaron Reed's not, Dean Lowry's not. It makes plenty of sense as we get into the stretch run to take a very, very long look at Devontae Wyatt and to give more snaps to TJ Slayton. I would argue that along the defensive line, those 3 guys were the 3 guys that stood out against the Bears. Dean Lowry had a nice field goal block, but when we're talking base defense and nickel defense, it was Slayton, it was Devontae Wyatt, and Kenny Clark that I thought really kind of moved the pile and did the things that we needed them to do. So Devontae Wyatt's not going to get any better in particular sitting on the bench. He's going to get better the more snaps that he's going to play. He's a first-round pick. The Packers invested a lot in him. Now's the time for us to start to recoup some of that investment and allow for him to get more snaps and play more. So I'm excited to see Devontae Wyatt have a chance to play out there, but it starts with the coaching staff allowing him to get out there.
Yeah, for sure. And not only that, but that enables you to look at Kenny Clark in some other positions outside of the 5
Good
technique on the
point.
defensive line. Maybe he can pick up less double teams if Devontae Wyatt or TJ Slayton, big body guys that really project to be in that same spot on the defensive line. Um, it, Kenny Clark, we know how dynamic and athletic that guy is. So it seems to me the more that we can get him into some different spots, running some stunts and really being able to get some different mismatches, perhaps against opposing or offensive linemen, that's going to be something that we really want to be able to look at too. Kenny Clark is not going to lose snaps when we're talking about this. So it's not
No.
just about Devontae Wyatt and TJ Slayton. It's about really getting the most out of a guy like Kenny Clark and putting him in a position to be able to be more disruptive at times too, because when he's getting doubled every time, it's an awful lot to expect that he's going to be able to get off blocks and make plays at the line of scrimmage. Um, it's Jaron Reed and Dean Lowry that have been super inconsistent with being able to get off blocks and make plays at the line of scrimmage. And yes, their jobs mainly their main priority is to maintain their gaps and to eat up and soak up blockers, but really good defensive linemen can also make plays. I can't tell you how many times I've seen Dean Lowry, especially, be locked up with an offensive lineman and a running back goes right by him
Right
and
by
he
him.
doesn't even get an arm out to try to impede
Mm-hmm.
that. And that's the type of thing that's frustrating to me. Dean. He's been a Packer for a long time. I think he had one of his finest years. I was surprised last year that he had one of his finest seasons, but this year he's been invisible, and I think he's done with the Packers
Mm-hmm.
after this season. So his play hasn't been that good. So that's why I guess I just don't see what the upside to continuing to give him
Right.
so many reps out there. Let's see what these young guys can do. We invested a first round pick in Devontae Wyatt, and as you said, he's graded out pretty well. Maybe in
Yeah.
practice, he hasn't proven it, but some guys are just better on Sundays, and is perhaps the defensive line, Jerry Montgomery coach would say, "Oh, he hasn't earned more snaps." I get it to an extent, but at a certain point, your draft position is going to outweigh that, and you want to get a solid evaluation. And if he's a guy, he's a guy. If he's not, you want to know that too. So I would really like to see the Packers come out of the bye, and let's see if we can double or triple the number of snaps that Devontae Wyatt in particular has been getting, and get a real solid feel for whether he can be a future impact player or contributor on this defensive line.
Yeah, it's criminal. TJ Slayton and Devontae Wyatt combined 18 snaps on Sunday, and Dean Lowry had 26. It just doesn't make sense going forward. Bye week's a natural time, I think, for the Packers to make that adjustment. Wags, other position groups, have you been impressed by Rudy Ford? Let's stick on the defense. What's your read on him? Because he's getting a lot of run these last couple of weeks, and now with Darnell Savage out, I expect Rudy Ford to get a lot of run the remainder of the year.
Yeah, it kind of leads to this question. We're going to throw a question that I just saw in the chat here
Love
from
it.
Wayne Fromming. His comment is the defense better be more better be better on nickel plays, because the problem is defensive coordinator is not doing his job. So I think it's time to call Jim Leonard and have him be the defensive coordinator. Actually, I was looking for his other comment here, Wayne, talking about tackling. Sorry, so
Hmm.
that's another discussion. Packers defense needs to tackle better. So I've got the comment he made before. Jair needs to tackle better. The defense overall just needs to be better. I think Rudy Ford has been a bit of an answer to that issue.
Mm-hmm.
And is he someone that has the quote unquote pedigree or talent level to really be the type of guy that you would traditionally see back there playing safety? Probably not, but he's made more impact plays in the few games he's been out there and getting run than, quite honestly, Darnell Savage made all season and a good chunk of last year as well. And so I don't know why that is. When you look on paper, Darnell Savage, and based on how Darnell Savage played first couple of years of his career in Green Bay, for that matter, Darnell Savage is the guy that you'd be like, okay, he's got the talent. He should be out there, the impact playmaker. And really, it's Ford that has been, forcing turnovers, getting interceptions, forcing fumbles. This guy has been in there. He's been a sure tackler in the open field. So that's the type of thing that we need all 11 of our guys on the defense side to be able to do. So my question then, Dane, answering your question about Ford, what do you think the Packers can do on the defensive side to address these issues with their inability to, be fundamental? It's not just tackling; it's their fundamentals with their coverages. It's their
Mm-hmm.
fundamentals with their pass rushes. It's the fundamentals with their run defense and maintaining gap discipline. I'll call out a guy like Preston Smith. Maybe when you look at the box score, Preston Smith, the numbers may not be impactful the way a guy like Rashawn Gary can be as a pass rusher. But every week, I just see Preston Smith do his job, set
Yes.
the edge. And I will tell you what, if all 11 guys that are out there on the defense side of the ball were taking the same approach as Preston Smith does week after week after week, this would be a heck of a lot better than what it's been. So is that coaching? Is that individual play, focus, preparation? I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit of all of those things. But I do want to commend a guy like Preston Smith and moving forward for that matter for going in there and doing their job to the best of their capabilities, because that's what being a football player and making tackles and being in the right position is all about. It's not that complicated. But unfortunately, sometimes the Packer defense makes the basics look more complicated than it needs to be. So anyway, so that's just a kind of a mini rant and answer to your question, and then teeing you up, Dane, to try to answer my question of what do you think we can do down the stretch here, coming out of the bye, to address those issues, or do you think that this defense is what it is, and it's too much to hope that they're able to address those problems and become more fundamental down the stretch?
I'd love to tell you that there's, I've got a tiered approach to how this team can come out of the bye, but I'm not sure they're going to be able to turn it around defensively and kind of flip the switch over the next few weeks out of this bye. I do think that this is a time where we're going to see which guy. Let me even backtrack a little bit. Wags, I feel like most of the guys at the NFL level know how to tackle. To a certain extent. Some guys certainly a lot better tacklers than others. But to a man, you don't get to the NFL, generally speaking, if you haven't tackled somebody in your career, short of maybe Deion Sanders or somebody like that. And I say that because then I do think that tackling in football is kind of like defense in basketball. You can have a guy who's maybe not the greatest tackler, but high effort. Effort goes an extremely long way in tackling. And that was my biggest problem with Darnell Savage over the last number of weeks is he didn't even look interested in tackling. In fact, he looked actively disinterested in tackling the football carrier. After that 22 or so missed tackle performance, last week there were still 5 or 6 missed tackles, but Fields does that. You're going to have a couple missed tackles at the NFL level in a football game, generally speaking. 6 is still too many, but I will say that Rudy Ford sets a tempo. We've said it for weeks since he's been on the field. The dude is a willing and an eager tackler. He flies around the field, and I think that some of that is pretty infectious. You've got a Preston Smith. You've got a Rudy Ford. Rasul Douglas likes to stick his nose in there as well. And, some of these defensive linemen, Kenny Clark had a good week. Walker and Devondre Campbell. Don't think that Devondre Campbell doesn't set a tone even when he's 70% healthy. He's a guy who's out there making guys better. So, Wags, if anything, I think it's getting the right personnel out there for the last few weeks and just letting them play ball, and you're going to have guys that are going to be eager to tackle the ball carry. Now, there's going to be a lot of issues, I think, between now and the end of the year, because I do think Joe Barry, I'm not even going to be kind about it. Joe Barry's a pretty bad defensive coordinator for the Packers. I think he's lost the locker room. I don't think the guys love to play for him. I think there's a lot of issues with Joe Barry currently in the locker room. But that being said, at a certain point, these guys have to play for themselves and for each other and play for their jobs next year. And I expect this Packers defense to do that because some of these guys are definitely going to be coming back to Green Bay. Some of these guys are on the fringes. And over the next few weeks, you can tell on the tape doesn't lie, which guys are eager, which guys are willing, and which guys are going to go play for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, and that's just it. The guys that are going and they're just in the open field trying to make a shoulder tackle, that's someone that's trying not to get hurt.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, but that's also an accountability thing.
Yes.
And so, you just can't allow that to continue to happen. And so it's not just one guy that's done that. We've seen plenty of that, and it just drives me nuts. It's one thing when you've got a teammate that's got the player up and you're coming in from finish. You just kind of do the shoulder thing, like, fine. In that situation, really, you're trying to jar the football loose and maybe force a fumble, and it's not about the Form T tackle that you learn in fifth grade Pop Warner football, right? But when you're the initial guy going in for tackle, it is about effort, it's about technique, it's about
Yes.
fundamentals, and unfortunately, we just haven't seen that across the board too often this season. So I'm going to answer my own question. Unless these guys come back and all of a sudden feel like they can be bought in to what Coach Barry and the rest of the defensive coaching staff is putting in front of them from a game plan and schematic standpoint over the last few weeks of the season, I don't see this changing,
Yeah.
unfortunately, because you need all 11 guys to be bought in. And that's what I think is missing. You said it. I don't think
Mm.
they are bought in to this coaching staff. And unfortunately, that's why we're seeing that's our play out there on Sunday. And you could say, well, play responsibility to play. I agree with that, but it goes hand in hand. And if they just don't believe in what this coaching staff is putting out there, unfortunately, they're going to last longer than the coaches, and that's just the
Yes.
way it is. And so, especially if they're not a fringe player, they may not be on the Packers, but they're going to have a job. And it's disappointing, I realize, and not all the guys on this defense are doing that. So I don't want to make it sound
No,
like
they're not.
it's everyone, but you can tell. You can tell, as you said, on tape and out there on Sundays, the guys that are like really fully bought in and prepared and really putting in that effort, and the ones that aren't. And the good news is with Darnell Savage getting benched a few weeks ago, I think at least even if it came a little bit late, there is a little bit of accountability there.
Yeah.
A guy like Ford going out there and playing the way he is, as you said, that can be infectious. So hopefully, if nothing else, maybe it is the players that respond to each other, and we can get a little bit better play from that standpoint down the stretch as well.
Mhm.
Um, Dane, just to kind of shift gears a little bit here as we come here near the end of this episode, any adjustments? We've been talking about the defense and what we'd like to see down the stretch for some adjustments, but any adjustments or schematic changes that you would like to see either on offense or special teams coming out of the bye, either that you would expect to see or would just like to see this coaching staff make?
Well, Wags, I think offensively, we've been talking a lot of defense. Offensively, I actually think this Packers offense is settling in quite a bit. It starts up front, but with the personnel that they currently have, I think decision making at times, we talk about those third and short and fourth and shorts, but overall they've been in a lot more manageable positions. They've been able to strike. I mean, they put up a lot of points against the Eagles a couple weeks ago. Last week they did enough to take care of the Chicago Bears. I like what they're able to do. I think that they've been running the ball more consistently. They haven't shied away from it at important times. So really what I'm excited to see is the potential and the possibility of Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs on the field at the same time. And I don't think I'm saying anything that every other Packer fan isn't licking their chops to see, but I want to see those two young guys get out there after it at the same time. I would maybe like to see a little bit more Josiah DeGuara get some work out there as well. One fashion or another, it just seems like anytime he's in the backfield and plays kind of that de facto H-back, fullback role, he always seems to get his hat on somebody. I love that about Josiah. So maybe get a couple more snaps from him. But overall, Wags, I like the direction of this offense. I think that they're starting to mesh. They're starting to gel. It starts up front with that offensive line. But with these young wide receivers, there's a real chance, and I do think Aaron Rodgers comes back next year. There's a real chance for Aaron to build true chemistry with Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson and Samori Toure. Let's not forget him as well, and start to work that out as this season comes to an end. And I think some of that would have a real hangover, spillover effect going into the 2023 season if Rodgers is more comfortable with this young group going into 2023.
Yeah, one of that I was just going to say that might be the adjustment is Romeo Doubs comes back healthy.
Yeah.
The only question is they've been mostly going two wide receiver sets with the extra tight end, or if they've got both Dylan and AJ Jones out there. depending on the personnel,
Hmm.
that they've got out on the field, that's also impacted, I think, the number of reps that Josiah Dewar has been able to get out there
Right.
as well.
It's fair.
So it'll be interesting to see. Like, we want to see them run the football more. So would go, putting out three wide receiver sets really make a lot of sense? Would putting Romeo Dobbs out there at the expense of some of Alan Lazard's snaps make sense? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Does Christian Watson need to get 60 reps out there? Maybe, maybe not. So
Right.
maybe it could be a little bit of all of those things. But so it'll be interesting to see what wrinkle or what impact Romeo Dobbs might be able to have if he can come back healthy. We've seen what Christian Watson can do the last few weeks. Romeo Dobbs has been up and down. He's been, a guy that has had a few injuries here, especially lately, has been out. But I would really love to see if the Packers are able to find a way to figure out what they have with those two guys. If they can figure out some ways, maybe not exclusively, but get some snaps with both of them out there on the football field. And I'm not talking like 3 or 4 snaps. I'm talking maybe 15, 20 snaps.
Hmm.
Is really what I'd like to see. And does that put a little bit more stress on opposing defenses? If you've got a Lazard or a Randall Cobb doing their thing and kind of covering the middle of the field and being that release valve, and all of a sudden you've got Romeo Dobbs and Christian Watson doing their thing on the outside, is there some things that they can do to create some additional mismatches if they're out there on the field together? So I think that's the one wrinkle. We've seen the offensive line settle in. We've
Hmm.
seen our running game get going. We've seen our pass game get going. So I agree the offense is in a good spot. But could a return of Romeo Dobbs and the level that we saw from him early in the season be something that could further impact and put this offense over the top and getting back to that offense that we've seen over the last 5, 10 years, and we traditionally see under Aaron Rodgers? That's an exciting prospect,
It is.
regardless of what we finish up record wise or if we get into the playoff going into the next season. Because I agree, as long as Aaron Rodgers wants to continue to play football, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, I don't think he's going anywhere
No.
because of his contract situation. So we saw some good stuff from Jordan Love. So that's a discussion for another day. But
Hmm.
Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback next year if he wants to continue playing for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
And so the question is, does he have some really bona fide weapons with both Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs moving forward? That could be a big answer that we could get in the last 4 or 5 games this season.
Well, yeah, and Wags, I mean, if this Packers offense, if we had this starting five offensive line playing the way that they've been playing the last couple of weeks, with or without David Bakhtiari for the season, anything close to this kind of production from the offensive line, with the little bit more diverse play calling and with the emergence of Christian Watson, we'd have a few more wins. That's just a reality. So it's very, very exciting, I think, to see this Packers offense start to come together. They're starting to build an identity, and we're starting to see guys step up and take charge and be playmakers. Certainly Christian Watson's a big part of that, but there's a lot of other guys out there that are doing their jobs now. So that's going to be something we can hang our hat on. Whatever happens, as you mentioned, going into next year, we've got some talent on this offense going forward. Young talent, but some real talent. And you and I both know first contracts in the NFL are key. You can make a lot of hay in those second year, third year guys, and you can make maybe another run with this Packers offense.
Yep. So Dane, why don't to close out here? We said we don't have a game preview to get into this week, obviously with it being bye. But let's do our Leap Spirits Players of the Week segment here, looking back at this past game against the Bears. And so, of course, Leap Spirits vodka is brought to you in Wisconsin. So, if you would like to find Leap Spirits in a retail store or restaurant near you, go to leapspirits.com and click on Find Leap Vodka. So, Dane,
Yeah.
let's first start with the players of the week. And then we're not going to get score predictions this week, but what we thought we would do is make a prediction or two for the remaining 4 games of the regular season coming out of the bye. So, first of all, I'll let you take the lead. Who do you have as an offensive player of the week this past week against the Bears?
I'm going with Christian Watson. Is my Leap Spirits offensive player of the week. Looks electric. He's put together one of the more remarkable 4-game stretches I can remember any Green Bay Packer ever doing, outside of maybe Aaron Rodgers. The touchdowns are awesome, but also just get the ball in the guy's hands and he's gone. And that's a unique skill set to be able to run away from defenders in this league, especially as a young guy like him. Every reason in the book, Wags, for Christian Watson's season to just continue to go south after the way it started. Every reason. This shows a mental toughness that Christian Watson has. It shows the talent level that he has. We're just scratching the surface. So Christian Watson, not only the last few weeks, but this past week, the Packers don't win against the Bears without Christian Watson. So he is my offensive Leap Spirits player of the game against the Bears.
Yeah, hard to argue with that when you talk about impact per touch. I mean, 4 touches and 2 touchdowns. Iced the game with that end around, just ran away from the Bears defense. That said, I'm going to go with you on Christian Watson, but I want to give a double shout out. I mentioned it earlier in the pod, but AJ Dillon, the dude, 21 touches,
awesome.
Touchdown, 120 yards. I mean, honestly, really fine performance. It's hard for me not to give him credit for with the number of touches he had, productivity that he had. He certainly, I think, deserves special recognition for what he did out there. Had his best game of the season with Aaron Jones a little dinged up, and he's just been looking better and better here down the stretch. So that's good to see, and I definitely wanted to recognize that effort as well. Maybe a little bit more challenging on the defensive side of the ball. Dane, I was having a hard time with this one. Honestly, it's Jair had a couple of tackles for loss, pass breakup, had the big interception, but just can't give him the recognition because of some of the the downplay that he had on this game. From a pass rush standpoint, really didn't see much of an impact there. Devondre Campbell, as you said, racked up a bunch of tackles, but missed a bunch and just looked a little bit rusty and slow at times for his standards. So this was a little hard. For me, I'm going with Preston Smith just because I think what he did to, fill his responsibilities. When I realize you could say, well, he was just doing his job, but it's what this defense needed in this second half, and really, I think, set the tone and slowed down what the Bears were doing early offensively against this Packer defense. And I think, honestly, what Preston Smith did was really enabled the Packers to slow down the Chicago Bears rushing attack. And I'm not saying he did it single-handedly, but what he was doing it would enable the rest of the guys to settle in, make some adjustments, and play a little bit better, at least that second half, and slow down this Bears defense. So I think Preston Smith was a big reason for that. And so for that reason, it may not stand out in the box score, but my eyes tell me that Preston Smith was probably one of the more impactful defensive players out there on Sunday. And without him, I don't think that we would have been able to turn it down and slow this Bears rushing attack down. So for that reason, I'm going to call him out as defensive player of the week this past week.
Hey, I'll second it, Wags. When all else fails, go with the guy who just does his job. And Preston Smith does that week in, week out. He's the heart of this defense. He's not as flashy. When he and Zadarius Smith both were signed, Zadarius Smith got a lot more of the press, right? And he's more the flashy sack getter. Preston Smith's a guy that just holds down the defense. He's a guy who he's a leader. He's a guy who gets the respect of the players. And yet again, this week, just played good football. Not flashy, maybe not the box score guy, but Preston Smith played really good football. So for that reason, I totally second that. Leap Spirits defensive player of the week, just played really good football.
Awesome. Dane, I might be pressing my luck here with my connection. So I'm just going to tease you up. I want you to make one prediction for the final 4 weeks of the season. It doesn't have to be number of wins. It can be whatever you want. Maybe it can be one player that does something. I don't care. Or, just throw it out there. What's one prediction that you have here? And then we'll wrap up here for the evening.
Christian Watson solidifies himself as Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think Christian Watson's going to end the year the way that the last 4 games has gone. He's going to go on an absolute tear the remainder of the year. The Packers coaching staff has realized how good he's going to be for them, and they're going to feed him the ball. Aaron Rodgers has a lot more trust in Christian Watson, and I think that Christian's just going to be, he's electric, and he's very hard to cover. They're going to be creative with how they get him and the football, and Christian Watson is going to help the Packers win some football games before this year's out, and I think he's going to help them win some next year as well. But for the next 4 games, Christian Watson's going to become a household name if he isn't already here in Wisconsin, and by next year this time, I think he's going to be a household name for any NFL fan. But for the next few weeks, Christian Watson's winning some football games for this Packers team, and he's going to be the offensive rookie of the year. What do you got, Wags?
I love it. Like I said, I don't want to press my luck here with the connection. I think that's a good one to end off on.
Yeah.
Well, tell you what, Dane. I said it offline. You made a very nice Instagram post about it. Let's run the table, baby. Run the table part 2.
Yes.
Here to end the season. It's totally irrational based on what we've seen from this team all year. But I don't know. I'll tell you what. I've got like this shred of optimism. I don't know what it is, but does it mean that we'll make the playoff? It's still, kind of an outside shot. But let's take care of business on our part and just roll the dice and see what happens. Crazier things have happened. I think Aaron Rodgers could come back from the bye with hopefully that thumb feeling fully healthy, and he's more confident in his weapons. And all of a sudden, we see MVP Aaron Rodgers down the stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Run the table, baby. Let's do it. Let's run the table, get to 9-8, finish this thing off with a bang. Maybe we'll slide into the playoff. The Vikings in round 1, and we're right in business. We're right in the thick of things.
I love it.
Dave,
yes.
What do you say?
Let's do it. Let's run the table, baby. I love it, Wags. Why not? It doesn't make any sense, but the NFL rarely does. Great prediction. I'm in for it. Let's lean into it. Let's have some fun after this bye.
Yep. The good thing is we can't be wrong for at least 1 week. So
that's right.
Yeah. All right. So, folks, thanks so much for joining us. Went a little longer than I expected to tonight, but appreciate the breakdown. Kind of just state of the team here as we come out of the bye or go into the bye, and let's see what we can do down the stretch. So, as always, be legendary and go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.
Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go Pack Go. Ain't showing no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will